Hello everyone and welcome to the premiere of our new YouTube Adventureland of short-form content. Since this is short-form, let's give you the pertinent info, albeit in an abbreviated form. Find us on Instagram and Blue Sky at Golden Silence Cast and on Twitter or X at Golden Silence 1. And while you're here watching this episode on YouTube, like and subscribe. It would mean the world to our growing channel. This YouTube First Run exclusive content exists because not every topic, try as we might, can be made into 90-minute episodes. And this episode is the perfect example of what we had in mind. It's a fun topic that doesn't really require a full episode while still being a cool story that deserves to be told in 12 minutes or less. This premiere episode will see us taking a look at the 1915 Mabel Normand and Roscoe Arbuckle short, Mabel's Wilful Way, and its connection to a historic amusement park in Oakland, California. As the 1900s dawned on Oakland, it was a city on the move, quite literally. Despite widespread automobile use being a few years away, the citizens still got around just fine. Oakland was a city full of pedestrians, folks on bikes, and of course, getting to and fro via streetcar. All those modes of transport kept the growing city hustling and bustling during the work week, but the weekends, not so much. Now, a group of business and property owners who called themselves the Realty Syndicate owned most of those streetcars and the land they drove over. They saw an opportunity to get people moving on the weekends, thus making them some cool cash. According to Christopher Beale, in an article for Bay Curious and KQED, we learn the Realty Syndicate came up with the strategy to increase weekend ridership and the value of land it owned in North Oakland, a parcel bordered by Telegraph and Shattuck Avenues to the east and west, and 58th and 56th Street to the north and south. There was already a sleepy neighborhood park there called Idora Park, but the Realty Syndicate had big plans for it. Beale continues, the syndicate leased Idora Park to Ingersoll Amusements, who built a beautiful amusement park destination for Oaklanders. They named it Idora Park and opened its doors to the public in 1903. Visitors could conveniently reach it by riding the trolleys owned by the syndicate. To be more specific, the park officially opened on May 16, 1903. Admission cost a dime, and it would get the park goer access to the beautiful amusement park with a ton of attractions. This film was just one of many connections to silent film history that this amusement park would have. How did the park get the name of Idora Park? Well, that answer seems to have been lost to the sands of time, but there is one potential name we can talk about with local, to us at least, connections. The Ingersoll Pleasure Amusement Company owned a host of East Coast amusement parks at the time, including Pittsburgh's own famous Kennywood Park. When Ingersoll took over the Oakland Fun Park, his first plan was to also name it Kennywood Park, a West Coast version, if you will, but Idora it ended up becoming. In an article for the East Bay Times, Nilda Rigo explains, the Oakland Tribune would hold annual Tribune Days at the park. In 1911, those attending Tribune Day could take a ride on Shoot the Rapids, watch an auto race, see a movie, or try the roller skating rink, where it is said that Charlie Chaplin earned the title of Idora Park skating champ. In thumbing through local newspaper articles, I came across even more stars who reportedly made frequent stops to Idora Park. I also read that in addition to Chaplin and Arbuckle, Buster Keaton and Julian Eltinge spent their fair share of time at the skating rink as well. For that price of admission, just 10 cents, visitors would find themselves on Idora Park's beautifully landscaped grounds with many attractions and exhibits on display. There were swings, slides, a bandstand, and a pool. There was even a ride that gave riders the experience of being in a Pennsylvania coal mine, which was probably a wild experience for Californians at the time. And as you'll see in the film, there was some blackface on display, so it wasn't the most racially appreciative and open place in the world. There were 5 roller coasters you could take a spin on at Idora Park. The 2 oldest, being there from day one, were the Figure 8 Toboggan and the L.A. Thompson Scenic Railway. The Big Dipper and the Skyrocket would debut in the early 20s. Now let's switch our focus to a movie that committed this fantastic amusement park to film. Mabel's Wilful Way was released on May 15, 1915. It was co-directed by comedy impresario Max Sennett and Roscoe Arbuckle and was a Keystone production. Want an interesting tidbit germane to this discussion? The working title of this picture was Idora Park Story before ultimately being renamed. Now, the park was used to perfection in this film. The Oakland Tribune would report on the filming of this short in their April 15, 1915 edition, where they reported, Idora Park would make an ideal motion picture studio for comedy stuff, declared Roscoe Arbuckle, who used to act at the Park Theater, at the close of a big day at Idora making movies for the public. The Keystone Company is spending the entire week at the park, including Sunday, completing a rollicking scenario in which there are fights, adventures, slapstick work with pies, and an ice cream cornucopias, and a merry time generally. Speaking of that production info, this short was filmed between April 11th and April 18, 1915. In a perfect example of this era's quick turnaround times, this film was finished and shipped a mere 5 days later. This short begins with some familial discord over dinner where music and onions cause quite the trouble. This fight between Mabel and her parents leads to her storming off and making her way to the local amusement park. Also making their way into the park are two pals who are short on funds. They are played by Roscoe, Fatty Arbuckle, and Edgar Kennedy. Just seeing the way these two carry themselves, you know shenanigans are going to ensue. And ensue they do as Roscoe starts the silliness by mixing it up with the Keystone Cop, played here by Joe Bordeaux. Soon the cop is soaking wet via comedic drinking fountain hijinks, and the two men run off. This is where they first come into contact with Mabel, who is having trouble paying for an ice cream cone. Arbuckle steps up and pays for her treat with money he cleverly steals from the ice cream guy. It's a very fun and ingenious sequence that really was a great and smooth introduction to Arbuckle's character. The two then take a stroll through the park, which leads to a pretty harrowing scene. They stop at a bear cage. Did I mention this park had a bear pit with only thin, paltry bars keeping bears from mauling the Oakland population? When you see pictures of the bear area, it's pretty wild and is probably pretty representative of a zoo of this era. I say it was harrowing mostly because of the close proximity of the actors to the bear and the fact that they feed the bear some of Mabel's ice cream. This pit is pretty bananas. Like I say often here, I choose to believe that everyone is safe and scenes like this are super controlled. But it's also equally likely that they just did this because it made a cool shot. Either way, they stand super close to the bear and let it jump up and eat ice cream out of their hands. Roscoe even lets the bear eat food out of his mouth. It is wild stuff. On our social medias, and hopefully this video, we will have photos of this Idora Park bear cage thing. It really is a wild sight, but pretty cool nonetheless. Since this is our first YouTube short, it's going to be a bit experimental in these early episodes. After the bear and ice cream party, Mabel's parents are reintroduced to the story as they are now in the park looking for her. Her mother, played by Alice Davenport, and her father, played by Glenn Cavender, split up to each search for her in the amusement park. A misunderstanding at a racially insensitive ball-throwing booth leads to Mabel's father and Roscoe's buddy getting into a heated bout of fisticuffs. Well, not as much fisticuffs as an all-out cane fight. After fighting, their chase leads to a merry-go-round that is going crazy fast. Now, I know they speed up films and such at this time, but this ride still looks like it's going way too fast. Now, the continuing adventures of Mabel and Roscoe lead to a slide ride next. This ride looks pretty fun, but in practice seems to be a broken tailbone waiting to happen. Needless to say, the couple has a grand and comedic time sliding down the slide over and over, and crashing out quite a few times. I've always loved the chemistry between these two legends of film, and Mabel's Wilful Way is a perfect example of how perfectly these two go together on movie screens. After the slide bit, Roscoe is found by the police, which separates him from Mabel, which is fortuitous for Roscoe's friend who winds up sitting next to Mabel. Not knowing he just battled her dad, he starts to flirt with her. She is not at all impressed, but he continues to push forward. The two eventually play a carnival game as Mabel's mom sits on a bench under a parasol. In garment-related discussion, according to the Keystone Girl blog, we get some backstory on Norman's fashions in this short. We read, "The thing most striking in this film is Mabel's outfit. Mabel was noted for her unusual garments, and this one is no exception. Her dress must have caused quite a stir with the public, as it's unlike anything seen in those times. The waistline, Empire line, is located under the bust, with the dress hanging very loosely about the body. The material seems to come from an old deck chair, and she wears a very, very short jacket. Her hat is three-cornered, the latest in a line of odd headwear from the Keystone Girl. All in all, she looks like a girl pirate. Mabel was fond of designing her own clothes, but unlike Mary Pickford, she was no seamstress." Now back to the film. Arbuckle sees who he believes to be Mabel and makes his way to her, flowers in hand. He goes in for the big smooch only to realize it is Mabel's mom. Realizing his mistake, he is subsequently beaten with an umbrella before running off to safety. Next, Mabel sees her father. She runs up to greet him and introduce him to her new guy. She introduces them and they immediately recognize each other. Her father attacks as Roscoe watches the two guys fight from afar. After the brouhaha, Roscoe helps Mabel's father up. Mabel's father thinks he is such a gentleman. He introduces him to her not knowing they are already acquainted. The only problem is that Mabel's mom has joined them and realizes Roscoe was the creep who kissed her. The family, now reunited, is completely flummoxed as the Keystone cops escort the two men out of the amusement park. The final shot of this film is Mabel getting spanked by her father. Now, from one end to another, the real-life neighborhood around the park eventually took off in popularity, which, if you know anything about real estate, results in the property value of the surrounding areas increasing. By 1928, the Realty Syndicate made the decision to subdivide the park and sell it off as real estate. The park would close at the end of 1929 and was demolished. Not long after, residential home construction began. These houses were the first in Oakland to actually have underground plumbing. Most of those houses actually still exist today, and there is zero sign or remnant showing that an amusement park had ever existed, which, as someone who loves history and loves the past, is an incredible bummer. But, there is a silver screen lining. The fact that this film still exists allows Idora Park to live on in the hearts and minds of all who watch this hilarious short. It's only 11 minutes long, but what it represents for local history will last far, far longer. And that, Silent Amusement Park goers, is the first episode of our special short-form content series. It was a blast seeing Idora Park come to silent life through Mabel Normand and Roscoe Arbuckle. If you want to learn more about the Golden Silent Films podcast, you can find us on Instagram and Blue Sky at Golden Silence Cast, and on Twitter/X at Golden Silence 1. And while you are here on YouTube, like, subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And please leave comments. We want to hear what you think of these new episodes. It means so much to our little channel. Thanks for being here with us in this first episode.